So I'm going to do a video which we will follow up some of the projects that I've done. Many people have asked, can you show what you've done and how they're progressing? Because I guess some people will think that what I've done may not work, or they sometimes fail, sometimes it may have changed the shape. So I'd like to show you the progress of various things. So let me begin by showing you the progress of the ficuses that I pruned. Now we've got so many ficuses that we've done it over a long period of time. That means a long period meaning over the last 1, 2, 4 or 5 weeks. So let me begin with this one. This one I did only about a week or 10 days ago. You see how I structured it. So you can still see the structure. But this one I pruned 2 or 3 weeks ago. And already in 2 or 3 weeks, look at all the fresh growth. If you come close and home in, all these are new leaves and new shoots. Like this is a brand new shoot from there. So much has grown in 3 weeks. That means 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or 6 leaves in 3 weeks. So they constantly need to be seen to. But all this fresh growth has occurred since I pruned it. So don't be afraid to prune, because the new growth will come back very quickly. So already you got to prune a second time. But you can see the structure is still there. But you've got to continue doing it, otherwise you will lose the structure completely. So this is how this one is done. Now let me show you. Now this one has not been done yet. I'm waiting to do this. Now this one was done only a week ago, just a week ago. So the new growth has only just started appearing. If you can come close, you see all these new shoots. This is what happens after pruning it just a week ago. So the new shoots will come, so don't worry. See, even here, all these tiny little buds, these will become leaves. So this will leaf out again. Let me show you some other ones. Now this one here was pruned, I would say, 10 days ago. And in 10 days, you see all the new growth is beginning to appear. You can see all this new growth here. This is beginning to appear again. So the structure is still there. I will show you some other ones that we did, because we did about 4 or 5 of them. Now this was done also, and this was done 2 weeks ago. And see, the old leaves are falling. If you get the odd yellow leaf, do not worry. It's all part of the process. So, and you can see all these lovely, lush new growth that is coming. This is what happens when you prune. The old leaves will fall, and this is all fresh growth, and the structure is still there. The levels and pads are there. So we will now continue to keep it in check by pruning the tips off. So it's a never-ending process. You can't just do it and leave it. So this is what happened to this one. Same with this one. This was also done 10 days ago, and you see all the new growth has come. In fact, too much. And again, we got to keep on top of it to keep the pads in check. Don't let the pads get lost again. And so this is the progress of the ficus. I will now show you the cuttings that we did. If you remember, we had lots of quite thick cuttings or branches that got pruned off. I'm going to take you to my conservatory and show you what has happened in just 2 weeks. These are the cuttings that I saved from 2 weeks ago, and they were put in these large seed trays, and using ordinary compost, what we call garden compost, which you can buy in your garden shops. And because they look green and lots of new shoots coming, I dare say that in 2 weeks they will have rooted. The signs of whether a cutting has rooted or not is to look for the new growth. If it shows new growth, lush like this, then there's every possibility that it has rooted. I haven't touched it at all. I will now see, moment of truth will come. So let's dig one of these out and see what root there is. I can feel it's hard to get out, so I can look at that. That's rooted there. So this I can pot into an individual pot and it will become a nice strong plant. So there are literally hundreds of cuttings that we've got out of it. See, even that's enough to pot on into another pot. So as I said, they're ever so easy to strike from cuttings. So all these have rooted. These will now be taken and put into separate little pots to go on into larger trees. So however thick the cutting, they will root. Now this is a thick one. Now this hasn't started making roots, but can you see these little nodules here? This is the start of the root system. So I'll put it back again. It's not dead, but it hasn't started sending roots. So I'll put it back and wait for the roots to come. So this is how they do it. Don't forget, this was only done 10 days ago, so it's still got time to develop. Maybe if I leave it maybe another week, they will have more root system. But even with a tiny bit of root, I can put them on. While we're here, I'll show you, these are crassulas that I pruned off my very big tree. These were done 2 years ago. Very big, thick trunks that I cut off, and see, they've all become plants. And if I want to make it into another tree, all I do is keep cutting these, stick it in a pot, and it will root again. So rather than keep making it too heavy, you can keep doing this, pot them up, and they will root. I told you before that the crassulas are very interesting trees. I've got here 2 leaves that have fallen into this pot. And crassulas have the habit of propagating from the leaf node. So that leaf, can you see from the node there, that little baby plant has come from the end of the leaf. So crassulas have this habit of propagating in this way. Not many people know it, but that's how they do it. So that's self-propagated there. So I hope you will not waste anything, and you can multiply your plants by doing this. If I can show you some other plants, these again were cuttings we made about a month or 2 ago. See how long the shoot is, more than a foot long. And this is rooted from some of the branches we cut off. So ficuses are very, very easy to propagate. See, that's another one. So this is how we get new plants from old cuttings. Okay, we'll move on to something else. While we are passing, I thought I'd show you this dissectum maple as a bonsai. And it started off lime green, but because we grow our maples in full sun, you see the effect of the sun. This is what we call a suntan or a blush. Where the sun doesn't get the leaves which are inside here, they still remain that green color, but the ones that are exposed to the sun get this lovely suntan, as it were, and the autumn color will become very, very nice because you've exposed it to sun. So that's a little tip I can pass on to you. If you grow maples, and provided they don't dry out, you remember to keep it watered, they will turn this lovely tan color. Let's look at another green maple, the famous one that I did with a crowbar and pickaxe. You see the blush color on this tree. You see all the leaves that are exposed to the sun have started turning red like this. But the ones which are inside, they don't get sun, so they still remain green. The edges can get a bit burnt. I also showed you another video where we forgot to water some of our trees and the maples did get burnt. Now let me show you a tree here, and our friend Joe here is doing a leaf prune because for some reason these trees, we miss the watering, and by missing the watering, the edges of the leaves get burnt. It is very easily done. So we are going to cut every single leaf off. I think I've showed you in previous videos what we do. We are going to get every single leaf off. So we're going to defoliate the tree like that, and in about a week, not a week, a month of 6 weeks time, it should produce a completely new crop of leaves. We did prune some maples, or did a leaf pruning. Let me see what's happened to them. Believe it or not, this was done only 2 weeks ago. They got neglected, so some of the leaves did get burnt, like so. You see, the edges of the leaves got burnt, but this one was worse than that. It got completely burnt. And if you remember, I did a video showing 2 of these maples, and look at it. All new leaves have started growing again. And if you just left the leaves on, the dead leaves, and did not prune them off, you don't get the new leaves. But by pruning the old leaves off, you get all these new leaves coming. So that's a tip that works. It's not just theory, but it actually works. What else can I show you? Let me show you what we do with larches. So we'll move to another area where we have visitors and guests from abroad, from foreign countries. Today we've already had a visitor from Lebanon, and here we have some folks from Atlanta, Georgia, is it?
Yes,
Yes.
sir.
And if you can introduce yourselves. I know you've been before, but
Yeah.
just introduce yourself again.
My name is Ian, so I'm from Atlanta.
Atlanta?
Yeah.
And Rebecca Woody from
Okay,
Atlanta.
Atlanta. But you've been before.
I've
So-
been before.
So
yes.
what do you think of the place? You have a good look around?
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Okay.
Honestly. We have nothing like this where we're from.
Nothing.
It's way too hot.
But you've
so-
got national collections in the
Yeah.
USA.
Oh,
You've
yeah.
been to some of them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. But
Yeah,
it's
some-
wonderful what you've done. It's amazing.
Yeah. I've never seen anybody just grow them
Ah.
naturally, like out in the field.
Have you been to the field?
Oh
Yeah.
yeah,
So,
it's
how
so
we grow in the
beautiful out
field?
there.
And the pond that you built?
Yes. Okay.
It's so pretty.
So it's now in real life. What you see in the video is what you now see.
Yeah, I've
You
been watching
remember
all
what you
your
did.
videos.
Okay.
So it's so
Okay,
cool.
great.
Yeah, it's, you're such a great teacher. It's an experience. And
Yeah, it's an inspiration, honestly.
Okay. You find it easy to follow?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
No, and it's so funny when you
Uh.
make a joke about something and it lightens the atmosphere. So it's really
I try to make it fun. Every hobby or pastime should be fun. If it isn't fun, then you shouldn't be doing it.
exactly.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, why
Agree.
struggle with it?
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Great. Hope
Thank
you
you.
enjoy your visit.
Thank you.
Thank you.
After showing you the ficuses, let me show you some outdoor trees. This is a very large Korean hornbeam. So this I did do a video when I pruned it quite a lot to show the trunk. I pruned a very heavy branch there, and then I went around pruning the shoots. If I can show you how Korean hornbeams behave, if you come close, you can see after pruning, they produce all these very fine new shoots. And in fact, some of them will become like flowers and seeds. So all these new shoots have to be pruned again. You can't keep letting them grow. So this is what we have to continue doing. We have to keep an eye on it to get very fine and nice ramification. Because this is a mature tree and already reached maturity with a lot of detail, I'm not going to grow thick branches to strengthen the tree too much. There is enough foliage for the tree to get strong. So all I need to do now is to constantly tip the shoots to keep it in check. So trees which are already styled, you don't need to do radical pruning. If you keep it like that, it will be okay. You will get the odd shoot which dries out, don't worry about that. It's quite normal. For some reason, you do get the odd twig that dies. But again, the sun hasn't seemed to have done much damage to this tree because this was kept watered regularly. And most of our Korean hornbeams, like this one also, there's no sign of distress or anything. And wherever there are long shoots spoiling the shape, I just go around and tip it. So trees which are already in good shape, you don't need to do radical or drastic pruning to it. So this one is fairly good, so not much needs doing to it. While I'm here, this is a dawn redwood. I may have shown you this many times before. And this tree was made from a garden tree, and I've done 3 air layerings from it. So this is the bottom part of it. So I can't leave it to grow on forever. So all you need to do is go around and maintain the pads so that it stays fairly flat. Take the tips out, literally like hairdressing, nothing more. A lot of you remark how fast I work. Well, I think this comes from practice really. If you practice a lot or have to prune trees all the time, you will be able to do it literally in your sleep, as it were. See anything shooting upwards? See, those are shooting up, I just prune them back. That one is spoiling the line, I'll probably take it back there. You can wire some of them. If they're sprouting or shooting up too much, you may need to pull it out. You see, we've got wires here. So that was sprouting up, so I've just put a heavy wire there to prevent it shooting upwards. So from time to time you have to do that. You can tackle pads one at a time. Where there are new branches coming from the trunk, I take off. So I just keep the new shoots confined to the pads. I will stand back in a minute to make sure I still maintain the overall shape. The overall shape has to be like that. Anything outside that shape, I'll go back. So this tree wouldn't take me more than 5 minutes really. See again, this is spoiling the pad, so these upward going shoots are cut back. The outline I'll try and maintain. I try to turn the trees from time to time, because if you don't turn the trees, this is against this shoji screen wall. If I don't turn it, the tree will become one-sided. So from time to time, if you see, I've got to do this. That means turn the front to the back, and if you see, I'm going to now display the back. So if you see trees on the nursery which are really the back side, you will understand why. There's a good reason for doing it. So especially if you're growing a tree against the wall, you should give it light from every possible side. So let's turn it around. So the back has now become displayed this side, which is not really the front, but I've turned it so that it gets light. Need a step ladder to reach this tree. So that's sprouting up. I really need to put a wire to wire it down like that. So I haven't got the wire with me, but you get the idea. You've got to do this from time to time to prevent the branches springing up. All trees, whether they are young or old, they have the habit of springing upwards. So you've got to keep that in check. So that one is done. We will now move on to something else, which was borrowed or hired by Mr. Ishihara. I think that's his name. And he hired it for the Chelsea display, his Chelsea display this year. And I pruned it before it was loaned to him back in May. Now, 2 months have elapsed, and already in 2 months' time, there is new growth. Let me show you what the new growth is. So bear in mind, this was pruned back at the end of April, early May. So in 2 months, it's produced these new shoots. So I have to keep pruning these to keep it dead. So you see how long these have become. And on this side especially, you see there's more growth. See, that's all new growth, so I've pruned that back. So that's new growth, I've got to prune that back. See, even these have become very long. These are all new shoots. You can tell the new shoots like that, you see? That's very long, so I've pruned it back as much as that. You get the odd shoot that dies, not to worry about that. So it's really maintaining the pads. Every time it is the pads. You see, that's very long, so I can prune that back. Spoiling the shape of the pad. The pad, don't forget, has to be like a herringbone, like a fish bone. See all these long shoots, much too long. I'm not just pruning willy-nilly. I have an idea in mind. So the pads, if you look from the top here, you see how it's like a fan, like that, flat. That is typical pad. Like this one, these long shoots have to be pruned back. You see how long that is? It's much too long. If you have the time, you can look at each shoot and prune it carefully. But because I have so many trees, I just go around like this. It works for me. I always emphasize that if it works for you, that's what matters. Not everyone does things in a recommended or right way. As long as it works, that's fine. I'm looking at this side now. Again, there are some long shoots. So the basic shape is fine. Now this is one larch. I will show you some other larches, not as big. Now this larch is the one that I started making in 1974, which is 50 years ago. It was a collected tree. It was almost upright and then it became windswept and now it's semi-cascade. Because I repotted it and the tree, because of its age, is getting weak, I did not prune it that much. So I've left these shoots to grow long. I've left it to grow long to pull the sap and to make the tree strong. So because the tree was not that strong after repotting and because it's such an old tree, I'm not going to cut or prune radically. So all I will probably do is probably take the tips out. I know it's not pruning it to shape, but I want to encourage more of these leaves or the foliage to feed back into the tree. So I'm not pruning to shape, I'm just pruning to stop it getting too long. And the more foliage I leave on the tree, the stronger the tree will become. So if you see this tree, don't laugh and say, oh, he's forgotten to prune the tree. I've left it like this for a very good reason. I've left it because I don't want to weaken the tree more. I'm just going to leave it to grow, and next year, hopefully when it gets stronger, I will then give it a harder prune. And of course I'm going to feed it heavily to generate more growth. So this required a slightly different treatment because it's an old tree and not very strong. Now this tree here, many people have been wanting to buy it. I've left these long shoots, again to strengthen the tree, but because it's quite good and in good shape, I will just prune it back to shape. So all these long shoots are just pruned back to maintain the shape. I've left it to grow a little bit to strengthen the tree. In case you are getting confused as to why sometimes I leave more and don't prune it so hard, well, the general principle is that if a tree is not that strong, leave it to grow strong so that it feeds back into the tree, and when it's strong, then prune it back again. So that's what I did with that tree. And while we're standing here, let me show you these Scots pines. These Scots pines, this one has been wired, but we did not prune it in the spring. It was pruned last autumn, and you see that the two candles have become like two long shoots. If I don't want that to grow too long, I cut that back in half. So again, just take the tips out with 1/2 inch of the tips. Take it out and it will force it to bud back. We use the term bud back because it will produce more buds further back into the tree. Also, I'm helping to maintain the shape or keep control of the shape. So just the 1/2 inch tips of these trees I'm pruning back, and it will bud back. I'm now going to find an example where I did prune earlier on, and I will see if bud back has occurred. So I'll move on to another site. There are so many different types of pines. Our native pines are the Scots pine, and then there are European mugo pines, and there's so many different types of pines. But the pines that come from Japan fall into two main categories: the Japanese 5-needle or the white pine, and then the 2-needle, which is the black pine. The black pine, you can either get them as ordinary bark, or you can get them as the corky bark pines. Now, this is an ordinary straight black pine. And let me show you what has happened here. These are the candles which I've allowed to grow. I've allowed them to grow because they came from Japan last year, not this year, the previous year, and they have to acclimatize themselves to our growing conditions. So what I did was, I did not prune them last year, but I let them grow. So now that it has started growing, you see, if you look closely here, this was last year's growth there, and this is this year's growth. So if I don't want to lose the shape because it's already quite strong, I just take the tips out like that. Like this one, again, this is last year's growth, and this is this year's growth. So I just take the tips out. So that's what I do. I don't hack it hard. See, like this, I just take the tips out to maintain the existing shape of the tree. Like this one again, you see, over here. This is last year's growth, all that, last year's growth, and this is this year's growth. Because last year's growth is quite strong, I can afford to take this off now. So you got to watch it. Every tree is different. Don't be too harsh or hard on these trees, especially trees that come from Japan. They're not used to our climate, and they tend to sulk, and they need to acclimatize to get used to the climate. If you do it too severely, you could weaken the tree. So this tree is being grown to get it strong. Let me show you some other black pines. They are the cork bark black pines. So we've got cork barks in different stages of development. So again, the new candles are growing, but because the tree is not too strong, I'll probably leave it. The shape is not being spoiled. That one is getting a bit long, so I'll probably take that off. That is also spoiling, I'll take that off. But only the tips, and then hopefully it will bud further back. So if you look at all these pines, you see, here and there they're growing strongly. Again, I just take the tips out. Where there's not much growth, I would probably leave it well alone. This hasn't grown much, so I'll leave that alone. So you don't have to go around and hack everything in sight. Now these are the cork bark black pines. The cork bark black pines are very beautiful trees, but they're very temperamental. So again, because they're not strong trees, I will probably let that grow to develop. I'm not rushing to take those off. So you've got to judge each tree on its merits. So much for there's some more black pines here. I'll show you some more. Now these are also cork bark black pine. And you can see the bark forming on this. Let's get the label off. You see how the bark developed, that cork bark? And you see these are the new candles that are growing. So this one, I can wire it out, but because there's not a lot of growth, I'm not going to touch that at all. This one probably got more growth, so this is a new shoot. See, this was last year's shoot and this is this year's shoot. So maybe if I want to grow it taller, I'll let it grow. I won't touch that. So I will leave that alone. Now this one is again slightly different. Again, let's take the label off. So this one, whoever bought it, they can probably wire these out, have an extended branch. So if you want to reshape the tree, you can have an extended branch. So just wire it out like that and then make a new crown. So there's no need to prune that. So if you want to reshape the tree, then just grow it on and let these become branches. So again, it just shows this principle of leaving things to grow depending what you want to achieve from the tree. Again, these little kotobuki, they are called, very tight, small foliage black pine. Again, they're grown in this bushy style. I'm not going to touch that. I'm just going to leave that on its own. Now let's look at some of the Japanese white pine or 5-needle pine. These came from Japan just this year, and it has produced new growths, but because they were pruned very hard in Japan before they left Japan, I will probably not touch it. While I'm passing, you see there are a lot of cones here. These are cones that are produced this year, this year's cones. I know I may have mentioned it before. There is a school of thought that says that if you leave the cones on, it weakens the tree. I'm not sure whether it really does or not, because the tree is quite strong in its own right. So I wouldn't really bother. I usually like to leave it on, and I collect the seeds and I sow the seeds from the cones. So these cones have developed literally in the last couple of months. But I'll leave it on and see what happens during the year. If you're unhappy with it and if you feel that it does take the goodness out of the tree, then take it off by all means. But in my experience, the cones don't tend to weaken the tree. So again, the shape is not being spoiled like that one. If that shape is going out, just take the tip of that out. Take the tip of that out. But no more than that. The shape is pretty good, so that doesn't need anything doing to it. Now let me show you another part. Now these pines probably come from Spain or Europe, and it almost looks like a mugo. I couldn't be sure because I'm not a conifer expert. That little brown bit is the odd twig dying. It sometimes happens, so you don't have to worry about it. If it's spoiling the shape, I would probably just take the tip out. But because it hasn't made so much growth, I'm not too bothered. I'll probably leave it alone and feed it heavily. So it hasn't made much growth this year. There are some new candles. I will probably leave it. So again, you've got to just play it by ear and see what needs doing and what doesn't need doing. And then finally, let me just show you something about junipers. Junipers have this habit of producing long shoots like that. And if you want to retain the shape, you've got to get all these long, gangly shoots out. So go in the wood there and take those long tips out. So that's all you do. For goodness sake, don't just shear across like that. You've got to go into the wood and prune it like that. Prune into the wood. So this is not a case of being like a barber and going willy-nilly and cutting everything off. This is one instance where I have to be really careful in just cutting into the wood. See, like that, I go in there and take that out. So the entire tree you've got to go around doing just that. See, like that, that's a long shoot, go in there and take that out. And by doing that, you'll get further growth inside. And always remember to clean all the brown dead needles, like that, you can see. Now this tree hasn't been wired for about 2 or 3 years. It may need rewiring again. So every 2 or 3 years, especially junipers, they need rewiring. Remember, the shape doesn't stay the same forever. It does change. So, as I say, it's these long shoots that we are concerned about. So where they're long like that, we go in there and take that off. See, like that. I won't do the whole tree because there are quite a lot of these long shoots. So that's, look at this one. Look at this one. You see how long that is? You've got to go in there and take that off. And these little brown things at the end, they are the flowers, potential flowers. They scatter pollen and they even produce little cones. So that's how you deal with the junipers. And if you want to make cuttings, I think these shoots do strike from cuttings very easily. So I hope I've covered enough to show you what we do during the summer months, and hopefully you can engage in these tasks yourself. There you go.